Hello and welcome to Scale by Design. Today we are joined by Neetha, founder CEO of BigLittle. Neetha, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James. Lovely to talk to you.
Yes, I'm really excited for our conversation today, and just to riff on what it's like to be a founder CEO, and
Right.
what you're doing and where you are in terms of your phase of growth, and to just share insights with each other that I think is going to be valuable to everybody tuning in. But before we jump into it, I was hoping you could share a little bit about your background, how you kind of moved into the founder CEO role at BigLittle, and then just a little bit of context of where your company is in terms of growth phase, so people can understand your perspective and where you're coming from.
Sounds good. So my name is Nivedita, but Neetha for short, just like James said. I am a computer science professional by education, right? I have a master's from CS and from Stanford, undergrad CS, and from India. So I'm a geek, technology geek, right? I think for me, I've always been, I mean, I love technology, but I've always been interested in how do you make these products that people really love, right? And the transition to being a CEO or a founder has been it was a sort of a meandering path. Went from engineering as a, engineering developer to manager, then heading business operations for startups in India. And then I just took the plunge. So I have this mentality that if I want to do something, I don't overanalyze. I just jump in and then try to figure out how to swim. So that's what I did. So I did a first startup, just jumped in, figured out the rest of the whole bunch of things, which is non-tech. And there's this huge world of non-tech stuff, marketing, sales, customer success, or how do you even get customers? So all of those things, right? So that was my first company. It was a good training ground. The first company was sort of acquired by another startup based in Singapore, so got an exit out of that. This BigLittle.ai happened because I was working on a project with a really large multinational company, and they had a very specific problem we had to solve. And we realized that there's a better way to solve a problem than that it was being currently solved. So that's when we did a whole bunch of market research, came back and said, you know what, this would be a great product to build. And we started working on that. So one thing I did realize with my first company is, hey, just because the technology is cool, don't go build it. Really take your time, understand if the customers really want it and what form factor do they need it in, right? It's not just about building the technology, but how are they going to consume it? So for the BigLittle, we did a lot of market research, a lot of conversations, and we came and went ahead and did the company. So BigLittle.ai is actually defining a new category, and that's the category of revenue observability. Now, what does that mean? That means, how do I know what's happening with my entire revenue process, starting with marketing, sales, and customer success? How is revenue being generated? Why is revenue being lost where it's being lost? What's working? What's not working? It's beyond dashboards, charts, spreadsheets, and the rest of the snapshot kind of visibility that current revenue leaders have. So that's where we are.
I love it. That's really cool. I'm actually really interested to learn more about your product.
Yes.
And dive into it. But I think it's really smart. And I love how you put the emphasis too on doing a lot of research and talking with potential customers. And I know that's a common kind of pitfall that people seem to make when they're making or building product companies from the ground up.
Especially so for engineering grads,
Right.
who've got the engineering background.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge pitfall.
Yeah, I believe it, because there's also like, from the person I've heard from a lot of engineers, like there's all these like cool problems to solve,
Yes.
and then they think like, oh well, who wouldn't want to use this technology,
Cool
right? But
technology. Wow, this is so cool. It can do this, this, and this. But what is it doing for your customer?
right, exactly. Does the customer see it as a must-have, right? So do you all, like, is it like an integration with Salesforce, or is that, so it like sits on
Yeah.
top of Salesforce, or
Yeah.
how does it work from that perspective?
Yeah. So you know what? We are this layer on top of your GTM stack. Your GTM tech stack does not need to change. It's already there. It's functioning. You have a process in place. We provide you the minute granular details of how your revenue process is functioning. How really it's that's why we call it observability. How is your revenue observability on top of your GTM tech stack? So we integrate with your marketing automation systems, your Salesforce, your outreaches and sales lofts. We even integrate with your CS modules like it's Zendesk and your Salesforce Service Cloud kind of tools. We even go forward and even integrate with product um, product tools like Pendo
Hmm.
and and Mixpanel and so
Okay.
on and so forth. Yeah, so we're the true end-to-end RevOps visibility product,
Love it.
observability. Yeah.
And so are you, so what's is the what in terms of phase of growth you're in right now, are you like in scale mode, or is it still establishing like a deeper product market fit and dialing in on ICP, ideal customer profiles? Like where are you in terms of building the company right now?
So our ICP is very clear, James. It's these companies that are fast growing, they have their revenue process in place. They are beyond their product market fit. So these are companies that have a product market fit already, and these are B2B tech companies,
Mhm.
and which have a revenue operations role in place, right? So some kind of a even a small RevOps team. So those are the kind of personas we're looking at in terms of the companies. What we're doing right now is a product is all done. It's the customers are using it. We're working on the product experience. I think the product market fit comes in phases.
Mhm.
So the initial phase is when you say, "Hey, my solution solves some problem. My product solves some problem." So we've sort of validated that, right? The next phase is, how do I make this product really sticky? How do I really make it so useful to the user that they come to it every day, and then make it really create value for them? So we're in that phase, the phase where we're trying to may have the user use it a lot more and solve a lot more of their problems. So that's the phase we're in. We have customers that are willing to go ahead and pay for it. So we're holding off on the revenue right now, to be honest with you, because we really want the usage part and not have to tackle the paying part yet, right? So once they come back and say, "Hey, this is the value that we're getting out of it," we're going to start getting some revenue in.
Yeah. And just kind of honing in on experience, how do you, and just kind of being sticky and being used on a daily basis, um, do you have any examples of how you're doing that right now, or how you're approaching solving that, and making the most? I'm just curious to if there's like high level that all makes sense. Is there like tactical examples of how you do that?
So you know what? The most important thing I've realized is have a single user persona in place, right? You have your company ICP, that's great, but in the company, who's your primary user? And I think you need to really understand their day-to-day job and what do they really do on a daily basis, and what pains do they go through in the jobs. It's jobs to be done. I love that sort of it's a framework, right? You have the persona. For this persona, what are the jobs they do? What are the pain points right now? And what is the gain? And what is the gain if they use your product? So you got to build out this whole analysis around this specific user and the jobs to be done. So that's where we are. We've taken that and dissected it to the minutest level and say, hey, these are the things that they do on a daily basis. So and this is where the friction is. Where is the friction for them? Where is the pain for them? That's where we're trying to zone in and say, help them solve it.
So is this like, is it primarily conversations and interviews, and or is it like shadowing? Do you try to do share screens with them and shadow like their work, or is it like a software that
Oh
you're
my
using to assist with this, or how do you?
Oh, there's a lot of things we did. First thing was take RevOps courses, take the CRO courses to understand. Really, that's the first part of it, right? Understand the job, understand what they're doing, and then talk to multiple people. Shadowing, we did shadow some. Now what we're doing is, now that the product is being used, we're sort of analyzing their usage, and seeing where are they spending the time, why did they drop off at this particular point. So I
Mm,
think the the understanding of this user persona starts at a high level first, and it gets more and more and more and more granular as
Right.
you go, as you have your product usage in there. And then you start tracking where they're, which pages they go to, which modules they use, what charts or which features are they using, right? So we're getting to that point now.
So do you ever find situations in which like there's requests from the user persona, but then you like build it and they actually don't utilize it? Or do you feel like that happens, or do you feel like there's ways to interview or ways to ask or to try to prevent that as much as possible? Because I'm assuming too, like when you're starting out and you're trying to figure out which features to build out and which modules, like part of the fear is like, okay, you're going to invest time and resources and building this out, but it may not be leveraged as much as you'd like it to, right?
Yeah, you know what? At our stage, resources are scant. I mean, really, everybody's over, there's fewer resources, you got too much to do. So I think one thing for us is we need to be clear what is our positioning. What are we trying to do? We're clear what we don't want to be, right? So we're also a little, and actually crystallizing more what we want to be, because this is a new category, right? So when requests come in, we take a look at those requests very carefully, and we sort of ask the customer, how painful is it if you don't have this? So based on that,
Mm.
then it's an intersection of what we want to be versus, what is the customer asking us. And then you find that intersection and also prioritize. We're always prioritizing the requests that come in, and then we put it down to the dev team to go ahead and build it. You got to be careful what you build, because obviously it's like I said, the resources are scarce. You got to build something that gives you the biggest bang for the buck, right? So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And are you all bootstrapped, or did you take on funding?
we did a safe financing. It
Okay, cool.
bootstrapped plus safe financing. So yeah.
Nice, nice, very cool. And is
Yes.
the goal to do additional rounds once you
Yes.
get? Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about too, just your path as a CEO. One of the topics we had discussed, or we brought up in terms of something that could be cool for us to chat about here is just like biggest lessons learned, right? Over the past few years as you're building Big Little. Could you tell us a little bit about like the biggest lessons that you've learned, and how your kind of perspective on building a company has shifted and evolved over the past few years? And maybe we can just kind of share some stories back and forth on
Yeah, sure.
over the years.
Sure. When I started Big Little, I was a solo founder. I did it, by myself, right? So what happens there is you start second guessing yourself a lot, and then you do have a gut instinct, but all the sort of thoughts that come into your head sort of cloud the gut instinct, right? And
Mhm.
and you start second guessing yourself. So it's great if you have another person or a few people that you can actually sort of brainstorm with. Even if you're a solo founder, it's fine, but you need to have people that you can rely on. Luckily for me, I had a group of really good, really strong team members that I worked with initially. And these people, these team members, my founding team, right? They sort of worked with me in prior companies. So I had that sort of the trust and uh, I could depend on them to be able to, for them to give me the feedback or inputs. That really helped. This and then I brought on another co-founder in the last year. So now
Oh,
it's
cool.
the two of us that are out there and working together as a team. So that really helps. What I would say is being a founder, in any startup, right? Whether you're solo or you have 2, 3 founders, whatever. I think it's a lot about your mental strength. I realized that it's truly a mental strength game, right?
Mhm.
you um, I feel like people don't realize it as much when you're outside, but it's about really the tenacity and the mental strength a lot more than anything else.
I agree with you 100%. And I think it's actually something that isn't talked enough
Mhm.
about. You have to be incredibly focused, and your psychology has to be on point. A lot of the CEOs that I know are not like the very successful ones. They're not necessarily the most well balanced. People. They're a little bit obsessive, and they're very goal oriented, and they're very focused and honed in on their mission, right?
Mhm.
And I do believe like psychology is most of success. You obviously have to be smart, right? You have to be able to solve problems, but I honestly think psychology is probably even more important to a certain degree. Obviously, you
Yep.
need to have enough intelligence, but really, I think the difference is psychology,
Mhm.
and accounts for success. I mean, like for me, it definitely psychology was definitely the primary driver of success, because I started the company without a lot of years of experience in my
Right.
industry. So I think I had about 3 years of experience, and then I started my own firm. So there's no
Wow.
shortcuts, right? Like you can learn at another company or you can learn at your own company. But, it took me several years of failing and fucking up and just making like massive mistakes. And I pretty much made like every huge mistake you can make.
Yeah.
And somehow I survived it.
Yeah.
Like there was times where like I literally just like couldn't pay bills, and like credit cards were maxed out, and like I
Oh
was
my
stressing
God.
out. And I mean, I just remember though, like there was just this one point where it's like I was like, This is a logical time to quit." Like, like this is really bad. But then I was like, well, what if I don't? And they were like, what if I can't pay this bill and I just don't? Like
Yeah.
until I can. Like what if all of it, like everything breaks, it's not working, but what if I just don't stop? Right? Like what if I just keep going? Like it can't fail unless I stop. It can't
Exactly.
actually fail unless I stop.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And this is kind
Exactly.
of, I don't think a lot of people like this, but I heard once, and I don't remember where I saw some article. It was like businesses don't fail, people quit.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you've heard,
Yeah.
and I do believe that. Like I think businesses need to evolve sometimes, and it can be a different iteration of the business than we initially anticipate. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's about like taking massive action, collecting lots of data, iterating from that point forward,
Mhm.
optimizing, and then being consistent over a long period of time. And that's really what it takes to, I feel like, be successful at building a company, right?
I
Uh,
totally agree with you. I think the psychology part people underestimate, or you gotta have the really the grit. I think grit is a great word.
yeah,
Like you said, you can always get the smarts, but either through hiring or whatever else. But you're the one driving the company. You better have the grit or the
yeah,
tenacity. Yeah.
yeah. And I think what you said too about bringing on like either experienced team members
Mhm.
or having the right advisors is critically important.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I think I underestimated at the beginning how important that was.
Oh,
I
it's
I thought like
critical.
if an advisor is good enough, they're good enough, right? And then I've developed a philosophy of good enough isn't good enough, right? Like, you have to, like, rewards disproportionately go to the very best, not the runner up. And
Right.
so when it comes to building your leadership team or your advisors, you need the very best people. And our job as CEO is to get them on board at any cost, whatever it takes,
Mhm. True.
because that's going to exponentially impact our growth. So, I mean, I have advisors on our team now that we are paying a lot of money per
Okay.
hour, like a ridiculous amount. Like when you hear the hour, like, and they didn't even like ask for that rate. I just went to them, was like, "Hey, will you do this? We'll pay you X amount per hour," right?
Mhm.
Um, which is a lot more than like market rate and these types of things. But like I hand specifically sought out specific people. I didn't reach out to like 20 people. I was like,
Right.
who's the very best person for where we are as a company and what we do?
Mhm.
And then I reached out to those individuals and convinced them to kind of come on our advisory team, right? And I think that that's the level of focus you have to, like, we need to have. Like, we don't want to just get somebody who's like, oh, they're, pretty good and we know them
Mhm.
through a personal connection or
Yeah.
work connection. Like, you have to be very critical about who you're solving these problems with, right?
I agree with you. I mean, because any person you get on board, either on the team or the advisor, there's a lot of give and take. You're spending your time, your energy, interacting with them and figuring out, what the company needs. So you better get the right people on. I think, yeah, for us, I think we're at a point where the team has to literally triple or double in the next year or so. So finding the next set of people is going to be, like you said, super, super critical for us. And we need to have that laser focus, a focus on the kind of people that you want and what is it,
Yeah.
where is the gap in the team right now.
So what are the skill sets of your current leadership team? Is it, so your background is engineering
Yeah.
product focused,
Mhm.
right? I think you, a previous role, you were a chief product officer, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you have that technical understanding. Is the co-founder you brought on also strong in product, or did you get somebody that's like a different kind of skill set?
Yeah,
What does that
no,
look like?
it was complementary. So that my co-founder Harish is actually in the marketing. He's a marketing head, so he's a CMO, product marketing leader. So it's sort of it's complementary skill set, right? That helps because the perspectives have to be different. You can't have the same kind of people thinking in the same way. So yeah, those right now, those are the only two leadership roles that we have in the team.
Mm.
Like I said, my founding team members are phenomenal. They are primarily tech. So there's UI UX, there's backend experience, there's data science experiences covers between them, and that really helps. So the next set of hires are going to be more senior and more. I'll have to zone in on those specific roles that we need in the next set of people that
What
we're
do you
going to have
think
to
your
onboard.
next leadership hire is going to be? Like, do you feel
Oh,
like
I
it'll be
need
like sales focused or
absolutely.
operations or?
Yeah, so we're a RevOps company. I better have a CRO on board, and I'm gonna have to hire a product leader, and then we'll have to, and then probably some folks in marketing as well,
Mm.
and I'll put off the sales to a little bit later, and then we'll get the sales lead team on, and sales and
Yeah.
CS. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like so many important things to
Oh
do, right?
yeah, a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. I think our next move is we want to hire a chief operating officer.
Okay.
We're around 30 full-time employees, and then
Mm.
with contractors, probably like all in around 40
Wow.
people.
Mm.
And so I probably honestly I should have probably prioritized a chief operating officer hire earlier.
Mhm.
But I was looking specifically at recurring revenue services companies, and I was researching the fastest growth recurring revenue services companies out there. And the two very fastest growth companies that I came across, the CEOs were pretty much in a chief growth officer role. Like they were
Ah.
just relationship focused and content focused.
Mhm.
And then they had like a chief operator basically running the business, right?
Mhm.
And so I know it's obviously like a little different for a product company, but I still think there's like parallels in terms of like figuring out like, okay, what's the core value driver that like we can bring to the table as CEO, whether that's like, talking with customers about product roadmap, or it's revenue, or whatever the thing is, right? Fundraising, for instance,
Mhm.
I mean, and then having like a very strong executive that can handle like everything else. Like one thing I've learned is like I should not be involved in personnel matters. Like
Yes.
like that is just, it's a total, like you need somebody you trust, because it takes up so much time. Not to say like I don't engage with my team. I'm just saying when, questions come up about like how we're going to evolve like benefits or time
Yeah.
off or like policies or delivery policies, or like that stuff is just not where my time should be invested. And so that's actually a recent shift. Like our head of delivery, which is essentially head of customer success,
Mhm.
like she's actually kind of stepping up and just like actually operating the business.
Oh,
And then
good.
I'm
Awesome.
just, yeah, so I'm just focused on like the podcast and content and relationships and going to
Yeah.
events and that.
That's the other thing, James. I think we as so when you actually found a startup and your role is evolving. As a company evolves, your role evolves, right? So initially, whatever you're doing in the first, say, 6 months of the life of the company changes, and then it changes, and then it changes, and then it changes. So you, I think, as a CEO founder, has to change. You have to do things that only you can do. Everything else you got to delegate. I think that's been another thing that's a huge learning for me, right? I mean, when you start off, like when we started off, I was involved in the tech. I was having those tech discussions, and obviously with my background. But then once you start to grow and you're looking at customers and you're looking at doing the evangelism for the company, you can't really do the nitty gritty details of the tech discussions and all of that. You sort of have to trust the people that you have in place. So I
Yep.
think the evolution of the role is something that you really have to be really you have to really see that you do it well.
Right. And I think you also have to have the judgment to know when you should be the one adapting your skill set versus when you need to hire or get the advisor.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole of like trying to learn stuff when you really should just be hiring the expert,
Yeah,
right? Because even if you try to learn it, you're not going to do it as well as somebody who's been doing it for 20 years.
absolutely.
You know, like so I think like judgment
True.
is super important. And
Yeah.
I do like I feel like I am evolving, but I also feel like part of that evolution is developing the judgment to know when I am not the person to do something.
True.
And more I'm realizing that I'm not, right? Like my job is to assemble a world-class team and to market our mission to the world. Like that is it.
Absolutely.
And to craft the vision, like what are we here to do? It's like
Hmm.
very clear and simple. Like
Hmm.
we are here to become the category leader in every sense of the term and
Hmm.
to change the way tech companies engage with recruitment agencies, right?
Uh-huh.
Fundamentally change the model from contingent fee-based to
Hmm.
embedded recruitment on demand. Like that is our mission. I'm focused on that vision. I'm focused on getting the right people involved and selling it. Like
Hmm.
that's really it. Um, you know, it was
Right.
interesting. I was speaking with the CEO of a company that scaled from like 30 people to 350 people within 2 years.
You
Um,
spoke about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
freaking nuts. And so, yeah, he did this kind of strategy that I'm referring to, the chief growth officer thing. I'd love to name drop him because I think really highly of him, but I don't know if he'd want that, so I'm not going to publicly, but on the podcast. But I could tell you more about him
Yeah.
offline. But yeah, so basically, you know, what he was just like, you know, you got to get in operators. And, you know, he's like, quite honestly, sometimes they're going to do things that you disagree with or that you
Yeah.
would prefer to do it. But he says, you just have to let that shit slide. Like you just, that it's worth it. Like just let them do it their way. And even if you're like, I wouldn't have done it that way, that's okay. You just need to be focused on that core, like one thing. Right. And so I took like, every once in a while I look at my calendar, I'm like, okay, is this aligned with what I decided I need to be
Hmm.
focused on?
Hmm.
Like, is stuff creeping up on my calendar that is not correlated for me to like the chief growth officer thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And like it took me a while to really like buy into this,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's to the point now where like literally 90% of my calendar is like just growth oriented.
That's
Um,
awesome. I think I need to get there. I don't think I'm there yet, but it's like I said, it's an evolution, right? I mean, and contingent on the fact that you have really good people in your team
mhm.
that you don't have that you 100% trust and you don't have to second guess, right? So
Oh yeah.
you really need to get that set up in your team, and then I think you're pretty much good to
Yeah.
go.
I feel like it's like, how do you recruit a world-class team?
Yeah.
And again, it's like there's a lot of, I don't know, like content on LinkedIn where like, don't hire people that are motivated by money. You're like, you know, and I mean, I get like you want people that are bought into the mission
Mhm.
and values are aligned. Like I totally understand that, but like money matters, I think, more than like we're seeing on LinkedIn content. Like people are
Yeah.
just like, you don't want somebody that's coin operated or, you know, whatever. It's like money matters and
Yeah.
top
I don't.
talent is
Yeah, and it's
so
not
important.
binary, right? There's gonna be money.
Yeah.
There's gonna be people who did for whom money does matter, and they're gonna be just as passionate or bought into your vision. Go for it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, it's both, right? And I think it's just like, money, the vision, the mission, is that
Yep.
clearly articulated? The values, is it exciting? Is it
Mhm.
something new? Are you creating a new category? Are you at the front of that?
Mhm.
You know, what's your vision of the future? Why are you well positioned to thrive in that future? Why are
Right.
you the right leader to drive that? You
Mhm.
know, I mean, all of that stuff is like critical, right? And I just can't emphasize enough like how important like just building that world class team. And I feel like for product CEOs too, then like the in addition to that, it's like world class team and then fundraising,
Oh yeah.
like
Oh
being
yeah.
really good at that, right?
Yeah.
Which I've never done before. So I don't know if how good I'd be at it. I think I would have to get advisors to tell me exactly how to do
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah. That's a whole another ball game. I think that's something that well, you just have to do it. Whether
yeah.
you like it or not doesn't matter.
And I heard it can like turn into basically like the full-time job for CEOs sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when they're
Yeah.
going through that motion, it's like they're
Yeah.
literally not operating the business.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything else. They're just like trying to get like their pitch deck
Yeah.
down and their positioning. And
Yeah.
their strategy for the
Yep.
future. And
But you know what? I'm actually going through that process right now, and I think it helps because
Mhm.
you have this so you, unless you put it down and you're really, really clear, and we don't really do that on a daily basis. We don't do that on even a quarterly basis, to be honest with you. We know that this is working, customer wants this, blah blah blah, whatever, but articulate it, put it down on paper, and that this helps, this exercise. So
Yeah.
the only thing I really want this whole process to be, I'm gonna be jumping into fundraise this in the next few months, but I want it to be fun. I really want it to be fun, and I think it's going to be fun because I feel like we have a unique product that isn't out there, and I just want to show the investors the value that we can bring to the market, and just, they have to get it. That's it.
For sure.
You
Yeah,
you
you
have
want
to you have to
somebody
sort of
that's excited.
tell them that story, that they get it. So I'm hoping that's going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so too. And you gotta let me know how it goes. And
Absolutely,
definitely teach me anything you learn. Maybe you can come back on
absolutely,
and tell us all about it
sure.
when it's done. But
Yeah.
hey, so I did have a kind of a follow-up question for you, actually. So you mentioned that you're kind of holding off on revenue, and the
Hmm.
focus is
Yep.
like making it like really sticky and kind of optimizing the experience. Um, how do you know when to shift into like revenue mode, right? Because obviously, I feel like investors are going to be asking that too, right? Like when, how do you think about that strategy?
Um, so I feel like you should start talking about revenue when you say you're going to pull out the product and the customer says, oh no, I've been using it for this and it's given me value. So that's the point. I think you have to do it because I think we're there. I really think, and there's a couple of customers who are willing to pay right now. So we just have to get through the motion of getting those POs and all that stuff. So telling them that your trial period is over.
Yeah.
we're 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 gonna, this is the end of the trial period. Now what do you want to do? What do you want to do with it? uh, and they come back and say, hey, we'll pay for it. That's like the litmus test, right?
Right.
So I think that's
So
what it is.
yeah, so it's basically, yeah, it sounds like very situational too, based on the business, right?
Yeah,
Um,
for me it's this product has to create value. So
right. Like,
yeah.
yeah, like they can't live without it type of thing,
Hmm.
right? Like once they've experienced like the
Yep.
value add.
Yep.
Um, so and then I guess my other question is like how much thought and focus have you put into pricing thus far? And what's your how do you think of that high level strategy? And then what are like the tactics? So other, CEOs and venture capitalists and people just kind of tuning in are like, how should they think about pricing and how are you kind of thinking about it?
Well, I'm learning this as I go along as well, right? So the the way that I'm looking at it for my specific product is this: the initial customers who came in and they've been sort of our design collaborators, right? They've sort of helped us with. See, we're a analytics AI/ML company, right? So we need the enterprise data. We need the data from your Salesforce, marketing automation, your outreaches, and all that stuff. How are you going to get that without having a collaborative partner? You can't fabricate enterprise data. It's not easy. You're going to build, all your models are going to be wrong, and so on and so forth. So these initial customers really helped us with that, right? So we went with them. We went to them with a sort of a, they gave us the data. We refined it, so we helped them with it. So for them, you really have to take that into account and give them a price that they're willing to pay for. And you know what? They've stood along with you, so you're okay if you give them
Yeah.
a discounted price. Now, at the same time, there's different kind of customers, right? So how do you sort of protect yourself from not giving a flat rate to all kinds of companies? There's variables for every product or a service that you're giving. How do you protect yourself and not lose the upside for pricing? So we're gonna go with a tiered model based on certain criteria. And so the mid-market companies, enterprises are going to be very different from, say, large enterprises like a Microsoft or a Cisco or
Sure.
whatever, right? So we'll have to protect ourselves against the complexities of the larger enterprise and price them differently. So we're coming up with a model where it's going to be tiered based on certain criteria and also based on certain features. So some features are going to be a lot more complicated. They need a lot more data, a lot more involvement. I mean, in general, I think we're looking at it that way. Have
Yeah,
a tiered model so that we can sort of have a differentiated pricing based on the size of the company and so on and so forth.
for sure. Yeah, I feel like, and obviously this is a little bit different because we're services, but
Mhm,
we've really honed in on our ideal customer profile.
mhm,
And we've just decided like we're just not focused on true enterprise.
mm.
We thought about making the jump and okay, let's get Fortune 500, but there's just so many obstacles to that.
Yeah.
We do have like a couple of really huge customers,
Mhm,
but we didn't really like target them,
mhm,
right? It just kind of happened through relationship. And honestly, like our contracts with them aren't necessarily huge. Like
mm,
because we don't actually have a built out like account management function yet to do like
mm.
upsells and cross selling and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I try to do that when I can, but
Yeah.
yeah,
The
it's
enterprise, the really large enterprises need a completely different sales motion and different kind of engagement. So you need to have that built into your sales function somehow. And you should have thought through the whole process
right.
before you get in there, I think.
But yeah, so like some of the advice from one our revenue advisor was like, okay, so you're working with a lot of companies that are at this level scale, like
Mhm,
earlier growth stage, right? And we have later some great later growth stage, IPO level companies, public companies, but by and large, we're working with a lot of growth stage. So let's go the next tier up to
mhm.
just focusing on late growth stage because they're more similar to your current ICP.
Right.
So you're going to be able to talk their language better. They're bigger deal sizes, so you can you're putting together more complex like
Mhm,
solutions, right?
mhm.
But he basically wants us to like graduate step by step and
Yes.
work our way up to enterprise
Yes.
opposed to just like jump straight there.
Yeah.
um and so I guess it's a little different with product, right? Because like products
No,
are
this the same thing applies
okay. Okay.
because no, the same thing applies because you know what, your the problems the user persona that you're solving for at a mid-market company is going to be different from an enterprise. Larger enterprises, for example, you take our product, right? They're going to have a huge RevOps team. Each business unit of theirs is going to be like a company,
Right, like 100 people
yeah, and then it's going to be like
or
a
more.
entire business unit is going to be like a separate company. They function as a separate, they have multiple product lines. How do you deal with that complexity? Your product is not going to scale automatically. You can't
Right.
do that. You really have to do a all over again, start from scratch, a trial with them and see, all that stuff has
Yeah,
got to be happening. It's
and hopefully like be able to like roll out within like one segment, like one business
yeah,
segment before like every.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
And
feel like
sometimes
customer
the
success too, right?
yeah, CS too. See, sometimes these divisions have their own CS. They have their own RevOps. They might have their own separate functions.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to. I think it's a completely different
For sure.
engagement.
And you have to have like a great CS organization in
Oh
place.
yeah.
I feel like that would be like our full-time jobs too. Like
Oh yeah.
if we like either one of us landed on Microsoft, like, well, that's what I'm doing for the next 3 months is like, and then you have to be like, then and it's also scary when you're younger, like a smaller company, because then so much of your revenue is tied to like one customer, and then all your focus is going to that one customer, and you have to be really careful. So like that's another reason why we're not targeting enterprise because we've had customers that stretch us where we're like, okay, we have to grow into this client a little bit and even out our revenue, but it hasn't been to like, it's not like we have like one customer that's like 75% revenue. Like we've
Right.
had some situations in the past where it was like 20-25%, and that felt really scary.
Yeah, it's a little scary
um
if you have 75%. My goodness.
yeah, I know, like like that's how some companies operate.
Yeah.
But now it's we have a lot healthier like model in terms of our
Mhm.
revenue breakdown, fortunately. But that's another thing to look out for, right?
Mhm.
Like your focus, your attention, but then you're also very highly leveraged.
Yes.
So I think it can be, and then also like, from a product experience standpoint too, right? Or even services, like you want to make sure that that whole delivery experience is ironed out so you can make a good impression,
Right.
right, on those larger customers. So
Mhm.
there's just so much complexity as you did,
Oh
like
yeah.
as you said, totally different sales motion, totally different like delivery motion.
Yep.
Um,
You have to
it's
think
just
through it. You can't just
yeah,
jump into it. You really, really have to think through it, plan it, get the right people, The
Mhm.
teams have to be different. So everything's got to be, I mean, it's like, yeah, I don't know, completely new product even sometimes.
Yeah, I bet.
So
I feel like you need to like handpick leaders too that
yeah.
specifically focus on enterprise
Mhm.
at that point.
Correct.
Um, well, yeah,
Right.
that's really cool. So yeah, like honestly, I could keep talking with you for hours about this stuff. And I think this would probably be like a logical point to kind of
Yep.
in the conversation, just because we're gonna be coming up on time anyway, and I don't want us to be like rushed for the last 2 minutes. But
Yep.
I guess like as we're about to sign off here, if people want to engage with you, if they want to learn more about your company, um, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you or to reach out?
Oh, my LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's so it's you can just look for Neetha, Neetha, and Big Little. Big Little is the name of my company. I don't think people will forget it. So
Good
you
name.
should just look for that. That's the easiest way.
Love
That's
it.
yeah. I'm always look, and my there's an email address on LinkedIn as well. So if you want to write to it, that's possible.
Okay, really cool. Really good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the show and for sharing your insights and experiences. I really appreciate it.
It's always great to talk to another founder CEO and and just chat about what's the deal with the whole thing. But yeah, appreciate it, James. Really
For
appreciate
sure.
it.
Nobody else really gets it.
Well, you have gone through the journey, then you get
Right.
it.
Right. You can intellectually understand it, but it's
Yeah,
to an extent, but it's
right.
totally different doing it, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, well, really cool. And for everybody tuning in, thank you for joining us and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.